This was supposed to be a get-right homestand. This was supposed to be an opportunity for the Memphis Grizzlies to put some space between themselves and other teams racing against them for the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies are staring down their first losing streak of this nature of the season, a 3-game skid with the mighty Oklahoma City Thunder coming to town tomorrow. We're going to break it all down and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host for this episode, Joe Mullinax. Thank you so much for being with me wherever you are catching Locked On Grizzlies, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing. I am very happy to have you with me on this episode. No to Michael Cole today, covering the game late there for the commercial appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. He, of course, my co-host, to Michael Cole, the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication, and he certainly has plenty to write about. I struggle with the words, to be honest with you, because I've watched a lot of basketball involving the Memphis Grizzlies. I've been following this team as a fan since 2011. I've been following this team as a blogger, podcaster, media member, whatever you want to call me, this bastardized world that I live in. I have been doing this for almost 12 years now. Very few people out there have written more words about the Memphis Grizzlies over that time period than me. Said as many words about the Memphis Grizzlies over that time period than me. And I've seen good basketball. I've seen bad basketball. Right now, I am watching defeated basketball. And I have to admit that that is not something that I have seen consistently from this Grizzlies franchise. They look defeated. They look deflated. And I want to say they look that way after this loss to the Atlanta Hawks, the third such loss. They're finding different ways to do it, but it's single possession losses at the buzzer. This is, as we'll talk about later on in the show, it feels like the low point of the season. This loss, for me, was about body language. And you see it first and foremost, not in Ja Morant, who DeMichael and I have talked about with Ja in the past, looking disinterested on the bench. Maybe there were flashes of that in this game if you really want to dig, but that's not what I noticed. What I noticed was the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, Taylor Jenkins, and his body language, and how whenever you're able to become a meme as a coach for looking unsure or looking frustrated or lost, that's not a good thing. Because it makes it appear, even if it's not the case, even if it's not true, it makes it seem like you are at a loss for what to do. And once you've reached that point as a coach, you risk losing your players. The looks that were being given at times, the staring off into space, I'm not sure if it's because he can't believe the run of bad luck that the Memphis Grizzlies are having, which other teams have it worse. The Dallas Mavericks certainly have it a lot worse in terms of bad luck right now than the Memphis Grizzlies. Other teams have got it worse. But losing the way that Memphis has lost these last 3 games can perhaps be defined as bad luck. But when you lose this way for 3 games straight, and you look at the larger sample size of the Memphis Grizzlies, we talked about it on yesterday's show. Since the All-Star break, they are now a 2-5 basketball team since returning from All-Star. That is simply not acceptable for a team that is supposed to be a contender, that is supposed to be putting the foot on the gas and hitting the accelerator. A tough loss to the Atlanta Hawks. And the body language of Taylor Jenkins was unacceptable at times. Maybe he's letting it get to him. Chris Vernon of Grind City Media had a pretty epic rant about Taylor Jenkins on his show yesterday. Maybe he hears it. I believe Gary Parrish of the same media group, Grind City Media, similar words about Taylor Jenkins. At what point do you start to wonder if he is just a developmental coach? I've read, I'm active on social media. I see the comments. I may not comment every day on YouTube, but I read. And I am well aware that there are people that do not like Taylor Jenkins. They do not think he can get this team over the hump. And I have been somebody that has carried water for Taylor Jenkins, who has complimented time and time again his developmental style, the way that he's gotten this team over these last 6 years to this place. But sitting here right now, talking to you, I am not convinced that this is sustainable moving forward. A lot has to change and quick for these Memphis Grizzlies to find their footing, because their reality right now, the reality for Memphis is the way they are currently playing, they will be the 5 seed in the Western Conference. If Jaren Jackson Jr. is out for an extended period of time, rolls his ankle very early in the Atlanta Hawks game, I'm sure we'll get an update on him from DeMichael on tomorrow's show. If Jaren Jackson Jr. misses a long amount of time, Memphis is only 5 games in front of the 6 seed. The play-in is 6.5 games away. On yesterday's show, I said I think Memphis is safe from that, but how can you watch this team right now, especially defensively? The Atlanta Hawks are a good offense, but they are a losing basketball team. 15-18 on the road, 28-33 overall. They shot 57% from the field, the Atlanta Hawks did. 46% from 3. The Atlanta Hawks shot 46% from 3 on 28 attempts. That's 13 makes. They were a much more efficient offense in this game. Only 12 turnovers for the Atlanta Hawks. Guess how many the Memphis Grizzlies had? More than the Atlanta Hawks. 19 turnovers. And guess how many of those points led to, or how many of those turnovers, or how many points? How many points were conceded off of those turnovers? 29. How many times do we have to repeat ourselves, saying the same thing over and over and over again? It's the definition of insanity. Nothing changes. You look at a number on a sheet and you wonder how it happened. Watch the game. The carelessness with the ball, the inability to protect the ball, to maintain stability in sets. That last possession of the game against the Hawks was a perfect example from a guy who had a great game. At the end of the show, we're going to try to end on a positive note. And spoiler alert, Desmond Bane is a guy to be positive about. But did the game end poorly for Desmond Bane? The game losing turnover. Des was asked to do a heck of a lot in that game. A heck of a lot. Triple-double tells you that. But the 5 turnovers. 5 turnovers. At least he did it in 36 minutes. Ja Jackson had 5 turnovers in 28 minutes. That's not good enough. Vince Williams Jr. had 4 turnovers in 25 minutes. That's not good enough. And one of the things that can really grind your gears right now, at least it grinds mine, is Marcus Smart better have been truly washed. Right? And in fairness, it's not like he's burning the world down for Washington. So it's very possible they made a cost-conscious decision, and it was the right call. But Gigi Jackson struggled, and Gigi Jackson doesn't look the same. He's young. He's developing. I'm not saying you give up on the kid by any stretch of the imagination, but you could tell he is not comfortable in his role right now. Vince Williams Jr. told our DeMichael Cole before the game he's at about 80% right now physically. He looked it against the Hawks. One of the reasons you trade Marcus Smart is you believe you've got a cheaper, potentially better at this point, version at home in Vince Williams Jr. He did not look that part against the Atlanta Hawks. He did not defensively. Shot the ball well. Deserves credit for that. 6 of 9 from the field, 3 for 5 from beyond the arc. The 3 part was working. There wasn't much D. No Santi Aldama. No Ja Morant. No Jaren Jackson Jr. after just 2 minutes of playing because of his ankle being rolled. Memphis was missing guys again. They were a 7-point favorite going into this game. They were up by 13 points in the fourth quarter. That should have been a win, period. It starts with the head coach, but the players have to play. And the same things that have been an issue this entire season, continue to be a problem. There's not development on the court in that particular way, and that's frustrating. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll talk about, is this the lowest point of the season so far? I think it is. We'll take a look at a more macro view of why that is the case. Stick around here with us on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 2024-2025 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Maybe you want a game day feast after an epic 50-point performance. You can celebrate by ordering wings, pizza, or burgers from your favorite spot delivered straight to your door. Maybe you want to catch the next game and you want to order some go-to snacks and meals at a discount and get ready for more high-scoring action. You can do just that with Dash Pass. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. You must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Go and check them out today. The lowest point of the season so far. I talked about Taylor Jenkins and his spaced out body language at times. And I talked about media members, especially people connected to the Memphis Grizzlies' own media outlet, Grind City Media, being pretty frustrated with Taylor Jenkins. And I don't see those calls subsiding after the way the Atlanta Hawks game was fumbled away. Again, friendly reminder, the Grizzlies were up by 13 in the fourth quarter, and Atlanta was able to come back and win. The Grizzlies had the ball for the last possession. And what really makes it frustrating is it was entirely predictable. And the reason I say that, one of the best, broadcast teams in the NBA, Pete Pranica and Brevin Knight, they predicted what happened essentially if you watch the home team broadcast. Pete Pranica said numerous times there in the last 5 minutes, Atlanta has come back numerous times in the fourth quarter. They can do this. They have an offense that's capable. And it happened. Brevin Knight on that last possession said at least twice, you want to hold this ball and get the last shot. You do not want to give the ball back to Atlanta. Literally 10 seconds later, Desmond Bane turns the ball over to Dyson Daniels. Leak out pass in transition. The rest is history. That's part of what makes this disappointing for me and why I feel as low as I do in this moment on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is it's entirely predictable, right? And we as fans, we as people that follow the team, we don't want to be negative all the time because that's not a fun way to enjoy a sport. That's not a fun way to enjoy the journey of an NBA season, especially a team that still has a pretty good record, right? They're not going to completely tumble out of the postseason entirely. And you would think that they'll eventually snap out of it and figure it out. But this is a low point because it's predictable right now. The Grizzlies defense being bad is predictable right now. And if you're somebody that wants to replace Taylor Jenkins, for me, that's exhibit A. Taylor Jenkins has had an elite defense almost his entire tenure with the Memphis Grizzlies. That is where he hangs his hat. Outside of development, he is a defensive basketball coach, and he has had success on that end almost his entire time in Memphis, except for now. Since January 1st, essentially, the Grizzlies have been one of the worst defenses in the entire NBA. Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian had a great piece about it in yesterday's news cycle over there at Daily Memphian, talking about how, yes, the defensive scheme is designed to leave shots open beyond the arc, but they're doing that a lot more than they have before, and teams are hitting them more than they have before. So is this an extended slump for the defense, or is it starting to become who they are? I think that's a fair question. Another reason this is the lowest point of the season is the injuries, man. It's nobody's fault. Jaren Jackson Jr. rolls his ankle, comes down and lands awkward. You can't be mad at Jaren. It's not like he wanted that to occur, but it's frustrating. Another injury. You rarely have seen this team healthy this season. Santi Aldama out due to injury. And then there's Ja Morant. And I am not a medical expert. I don't have the medical paperwork on Ja Morant. They wouldn't trust me with those papers, nor should they. But I can tell you this, that he better be hurt. He better be hurt. And I don't mean that as a threat. I mean that as you're starting to lose sections of this fan base that have supported you. And I believe that as a competitor, Ja Morant wants to be out on the floor. And I believe that as somebody that wants this team to be successful, he wants to be out on the floor. But perception is often reality. And Ja Morant now has the perception, and the numbers back it up over the last 2 years, that he cannot stay on the floor. And what good is having a superstar, all NBA caliber point guard if they cannot play point guard consistently in the NBA? What is the good in that? Jaren Jackson Jr. rolls his ankle after starting 59 consecutive games. Didn't miss one. Will he miss against the Thunder? We'll find out. We'll see how severe the ankle injury is. But that's reason for concern. If Jaren cannot go, if Jaren misses an extended period of time, you're about to welcome the Oklahoma City Thunder into FedEx Forum to close out this hellacious homestand, the homestand from hell. Then you go on the road to Dallas, who, again, has worse luck than you. That's a plus, I suppose. Sucks to be them. That Friday night game is going to be a battle of the lost. And then you have a Sunday evening game against a New Orleans team with Zion Williamson. New Orleans doesn't have much to play with or play for, but they're going to compete. And Zion Williamson is having a sneaky, really good year. If the Pelicans had a better record, he would be in the All-NBA conversation. He still might be in the All-NBA conversation. You have to stack wins against teams that you're supposed to beat. And you have to find ways to be on the court and be dependable. I've said it once, I've said it, I'll say it again. At times in this life, the greatest ability is availability. And we are not seeing that availability from Ja Morant. And it's hard to depend on him because he's not able to stay on the floor. And if you believe, as I do, that they cannot get to the Western Conference Finals, they cannot get, heaven forbid, to the NBA Finals without a superstar caliber Ja Morant, that might really be the reason you feel so low if you're like me. Because I'm not sure we're going to see that guy again. At least not for an extended period of time. We have it in 2 years. Ja Morant has not played 6 consecutive games in 2 years. Flashes, bits, pieces. It's a tease. And then he's gone. So is coaching a concern? Yeah. Coaching's a concern. As a Taylor Jenkins guy, I'm not fully gone. I'm not in the fire Jenkins realm because I'm not sure you hire somebody that's better. The grass isn't always greener, and Jenkins has had success here. But the way they have been losing these games and the way that there is still not growth in the turnover concern, that has me feeling low. The injuries have me feeling low. The lack of availability for your superstar has me feeling low. But you know what they say? The night is always darkest before the dawn. And this is a bit of a first world problem in terms of NBA basketball. This is the first time all season that the Memphis Grizzlies have lost 3 games in a row. That obviously has happened to other teams more often than it has happened to Memphis. So that's a reason to be optimistic. This is out of character for them. At least the losing is out of character for them. The consecutive losses, the consistent losing is out of character. But as I said about the defense, what if it becomes the character? What if this is what they are? What if they fade so much that they're the 5 or the 6 seed in the postseason and they lose in the first round? I think you see some pretty remarkable shifts coming down the road if that is the case. We are approaching a pretty seismic 8 to 10 weeks of Memphis Grizzlies basketball. We are at a fork in the road. And given the current state of play, I'm not sure they're heading down the right direction in this moment. And that lack of certainty is why this is the lowest part of the Grizzlies season to this point. But as promised, we're going to try to end on a positive note on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Reasons for hopefulness heading into tomorrow night's nationally televised showdown with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Excited to talk to you about that next. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you can get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It can also use AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. If you miss a call, that's no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering a 20% off your first 6-month offer when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off 6 months. OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA, 20% off 6 months. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. That's a pretty good deal. Check them out. All right, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of being down. I'm tired of being grumpy, gloomy. It's time for some sunshine to close out this Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. And the first thing that I want to shine some light on is Desmond Bane. Desmond freaking Bane, who, in terms of injuries, he's missed more games this year than Jaren, right? So I'm not going to try to pretend that like Bane is always there, gee gosh golly. But when Desmond Bane is out there, you know what he's going to do? He's going to freaking compete. He is going to give his absolute best. You know he's banged up. You know he has all sorts of things going on. And he is still out there dropping a triple-double on the heads of the Atlanta Hawks, being exactly what the Grizzlies needed him to be once Jaren Jackson Jr. went out due to injury. 35 points on 19 shots, 14 for 14 from the charity stripe. 14 for 14. The Atlanta Hawks took 17 free throws in this game. They took 17 free throws. Desmond Bane was 14 of 14 by himself. You certainly can't complain about officiating in this one. The Hawks probably feel that the Grizzlies got the better whistle. Memphis was a plus 14 in free throws made. Desmond Bane was a major reason for that. Desmond Bane is a leader. Desmond Bane is a guy, we talked a few episodes ago about trading for Kevin Durant. Maybe Bane's the guy that gets shipped out. I have a hard time with that, man. I'm going to be honest with you, because at least I know Desmond Bane's going to freaking play. He's going to compete. When his shot isn't working, you'll see his rebound numbers go up. His assist numbers go up. He looks for ways to win. He wants to do it desperately. He has the mental makeup of a guy that you want in your organization. So shout out to Desmond Bane. That's a reason to be optimistic after that game against the Hawks and the way that he carries himself. He's not a perfect player. 5 turnovers is too many. And obviously he had the key turnover there late. Literally the last possession of the game that handed over, literally and figuratively, the game to the Hawks. But Memphis is not in a one-possession game with Atlanta without Desmond Bane. That context matters. I want to shout out Luke Kennard. 7 assists to 1 turnover, 17 points on 15 shots, only made 1 3. So that means Luke Kennard, who was 1 for 4 from beyond the arc, was 7 for 11 on 2-point shots. Plus, he had 2 steals. Luke Kennard is a guy who has maximized his opportunity. If he's not in Memphis long-term, and most signs suggest he won't be, if he's moving along after this one, somebody's going to get a darn good basketball player. Somebody's going to get someone in Luke Kennard who wants to compete. I want him to stay in Memphis. I think he's one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. And this is a Grizzlies offense that certainly can't shoo those guys away. Luke Kennard looked really good and helped put Memphis in a position to compete. Brandon Clark continues to impress. And this is a guy who sat out last Saturday because he had stitches in his mouth after getting an elbow to his face from Karl Anthony Towns on Friday night when the Grizzlies were playing the Knicks. You want to talk about toughness? 7 rebounds, 11 points in 21 minutes of play. An efficient 11 points on 5 of 7 shooting. Brandon Clark goes out there and competes. There's reasons for optimism. And the biggest reason for optimism for me is that eventually there has to be a progression to the mean. And what do I mean by that? You can have a regression to the mean if somebody's on a hot streak. You can also have a progression to the mean if they're on a cold streak. We have so much data, so many numbers, and then most importantly, you've seen it with your eyes. This Memphis Grizzlies team is better than what they have shown so far. They just are. This is not who they are. And the games that they are losing are all one-possession games. A bounce of the ball here, better positioning on a rebound there. We're talking about a winning streak and feeling a heck of a lot better about Memphis's prospects going into a very challenging game against the Oklahoma City Thunder tomorrow night. It feels like they're really far away, but they've lost these 3 games by a combined total of 5 points. 1 point to the Knicks, 2 points to the Spurs, 2 points to the Hawks. So yeah, when Memphis beat Phoenix in overtime, almost 300 points scored, 299 to be precise, you felt good when February ended. Until the Knicks game. And then the Spurs game. And now with this Hawks loss, things feel lost. But the Grizzlies are still among the top records in the NBA. The Grizzlies are still built to last in terms of sustained success. And once Ja Morant returns, assuming he does, when he's been on the floor lately, he has done some good things. The Jaren Jackson Jr. injury bears watching. If they lose him for an extended period of time, it's going to be tough. It's going to be challenging. Who do they play in that spot? They had Ja Jackson there some against the Hawks. Gigi did some good things. He did some not so good things. 5 turnovers, as I mentioned earlier. Not good enough. It's going to be hard to stay on the floor. Marvin Bagley coming back from an injury. How do they utilize him? Do they utilize him? Does Jay Huff get back to getting some run? These are all questions that are going to have to be answered in the days ahead. But you still have Jalen Wells and Zach Edey, 2 rookies who competed well against the Hawks. It wasn't their best games, but it certainly wasn't their worst games. You have players like a Desmond Bane that are able to take over games and give you opportunities to win. And you still have roughly 20 games left to get this thing right. The playoffs don't start tomorrow. They're not opening up with the Thunder on Wednesday night. This is still regular season basketball, and you want to be playing your best ball by the end of the season. We're almost there, right? It's the 4th quarter. We're in the home stretch. The Grizzlies still have a little bit of time to get this right. If you doubt that, I understand why. Taylor Jenkins is not doing much to elicit confidence these days. The availability of the players, the body language, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't look good right now. But part of fandom is belief. And as I mentioned, we have a much larger sample size of this team winning than losing this season. Maybe it's not against the Thunder. We'll talk more about that on tomorrow's show. But I do think that brighter days are ahead for this team because they can pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and you have the talent to do just that. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. As I mentioned, the next time we're together will be the Wednesday show. Grizzlies Thunder on ESPN will be the major focus of ours. Hopefully we'll get updates on Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant, others that have been banged up. We'll see how they look going into an ESPN game against Oklahoma City. SGA dropping 50 burgers. It's going to be a challenge. The Thunder are among the very best in the league. Can the Grizzlies get right in the last game of the homestand? We'll find out soon, and we'll talk about it on tomorrow's episode. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts. We're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, it's all good. Make the Michael and myself a part of your Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. I was so flustered earlier in the show, I forgot to shout out Locked On Daily, lockedondaily.com. That's our free daily newsletter. Get written words from me, coverage of fantasy basketball advice, NBA at large, information and analysis, so much more. Go to lockedondaily.com and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode of the show. I'm Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. I'll catch you back here tomorrow. DeMichael Cole, my co-host, will be back with me. We'll preview Grizzlies Thunder and hopefully have some good news about injuries. Until then, see ya.